So, good morning and welcome to this week's Breakfast with Mike. And this week we're talking about value tips when you're working with buyers. And some of this should be simple, but I'm going to try to draw a comparison for you. When a seller hires a listing agent, they have certain expectations of that listing agent. And we've talked before about going into a listing appointment and talking about the things that we provide that add value. Networking is obviously number one. And we talk about how we talk to buyer agents to help sell our listing and things like that. And if you drew a list of things that the seller has come to expect or that we are starting to provide, they might include things like, okay, well, when I'm working on the listing side, one of the first things I do is I call my buyer agent network. Then I might call my core or sphere, however it is that you look at it. Then I might run some ads, to try to get people to call me. I might even knock on neighbor doors and say, hey, you want to help pick your neighbor? I'm about to put this on the market. So there are certain things that we do. And what I looked at was what happens when we work the buyer. I know by now you're all aware of the lawsuit that's out there and some of the settlements that have already been made and some of the changes that are coming. And one of those changes that we know is going to be there is going to be in regards to representing buyers. There's no doubt that's going to happen. It's not a question of if it's going to be required, it's going to be when is it going to be required? When are we going to be required to sign a buyer broker agreement with virtually every buyer you're working? And to understand that the pendulum is going to swing the other way. It's going to go too far the other way because of this lawsuit. As somebody who took a lot of listings, I understood the value of having buyer agents to show and sell my listings. I also understood the value that most of those agents were not really good at negotiating their own commission. So it was part of what I did. And that's the way it's been for many, many years, is the listing agent would go take the listing and it always included the fee that was going to be paid to the buyer agent. Now, you can look at this a number of different ways. You can say, well, why should I pay the buyer agent? They're not working for me. It's got nothing to do with you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. You're not paying it. It's part of what I offer. But some people won't explain it that way. And the pendulum is going to swing. There are going to be sellers out there, and I've already seen some additional lawsuits that are coming out almost individually now saying, oh, I paid the buyer agent, I want my money back. I want to sue them. Okay. When the pendulum swings the other way, we're going to have sellers that are going to say, I don't want to pay a buyer broker fee. And only the top, let's say 5 to 10% of listing agents are going to be able to sell the seller on the fact that that's really not in their best interest. We get paid as a listing agent, whatever number it is you get paid, and out of that fee, we offer something to the buyer agent. That's in the seller's best interest to do it that way. But it's not going to be that way for much longer because the pendulum will swing the other way and we will start by saying, okay, we're not going to offer them anything. Now, when that starts to happen, we're going to have companies out there that are more than likely going to start marketing themselves and say, listen, if you want to find your house, call me. If we've already got it listing, you won't have to pay a buyer fee at all, ever. And some of those people will start handling the listing side and the buyer side for the same fee. And that's part of what they want as settlement in this lawsuit. What does that do for you as a buyer agent? If a buyer has a choice, pay you a fee outside of closing, or go to the listing agent and pay nothing, which is whether or not that's the way it's going to work is irrelevant. That's the way they think it's going to work. So they're going to make those phone calls. Some of them will. How do we demonstrate that we have additional value? Now, you could say, well, it's my negotiating skills or whatever, but I can point out to you that a brand new agent could come out and list a house, have no negotiating skills, and still get the listing and still get paid X% commission. So when you say, I'm a better negotiator, and that's why you should pay me as a buyer agent, the argument's going to be, I can go direct to the listing agent. They're just as good a negotiator. They're not going to think that that agent really has the seller's best interest, not theirs. That's not the way they're going to think. They're going to think, I can save X%. It's kind of the reason why the Walmarts and all those other discount stores are out there, because people think about money first. But people also buy Jaguars. So finding the right people that understand value will go in your favor. So let's talk about some things that you could use to demonstrate your value. Now, I said when you take a listing, one of the first things that the listing agent could do would be talk to the buyer agent network. Well, can't we do the same thing on the other side? Well, of course we can. We say to a buyer, listen, these are some of the things that I do that most agents don't. Most agents right now, if they meet with you and you give them some criteria about what you want to buy, they put your name in MLS and they send you a bunch of emails every morning with all the new listings that are coming out. Except that in this market, there aren't a lot of new listings that are coming out. And the chances are you already saw those come out yesterday because you were checking MLS like 4, 5, 6, 10 times a day, hoping something new would come out. You didn't just wait until midnight and see the new ones and send an email. You were looking all the time. So let me start by saying the really good deals a lot of times never hit MLS. The house you buy might not even hit MLS. And if that's true, how am I going to be able to help you find it? Well, one of the first things I do is I know that there are a number of top agents out there that have properties that are going to come on the market in the next month or two, but they're not yet. And I network with them. So one of the first things I'll do if we decide to work together is I will call that network of listing agents and tell them, I've got somebody, this is what they're looking for. This is their price range. What do you got coming? Most agents will never do that for you. The second thing I will do is I will call up my own sphere, my own core people, and I'll talk to them about, listen, I've got this buyer. This is what they're looking for. There's nothing right now in MLS. Who do you know that might be thinking about selling? And I'll call them all up. A third thing that I'll do for you that most agents will never do because they're just putting your name in MLS and hoping something pops. But the third thing I'll do is I'll run ads for you. I can run Facebook ads and things like that they're not going to be specific with your name, but they might say, I've got a buyer, they're pre-approved, they're looking for this, this, and this. If you know of somebody thinking about selling, give me a call. Send me a text, shoot me an email, whatever. But I'll spend money trying to find the house that you're going to buy because it's not in MLS right now. A fourth thing that I do, and this is something that I could guarantee you, if you ask most agents, they'll tell you, no, there's no way I'm going to do that. But if you know what kinds of areas that you're looking to purchase in, I'll knock on every door in Oklahoma if I have to. You tell me the areas, I'll start knocking on doors. And I'll ask them, who do they know? Because a lot of times they do. They know people that are thinking of moving. And by the way, couldn't ask for a better time than right before spring. How many people have they heard saying, yeah, as soon as this spring break, soon as the flowers pop, I'm moving. Well, why don't we start doing something with that now? Why don't we get ahead of that now? Wouldn't that make sense? Sure. And then a fifth thing that I do that most don't involves my vendor network. Now, I don't know how many agents you've dealt with that have a vendor network. Some do, some will say they do. I have specific people that I've done business with and past clients of mine have done business with. Okay. And I'll make sure they know everything about what you're looking for. But that's not the important thing right now. Got brought to my attention one time that by the time somebody starts doing a home inspection, they're spending money to find problems. What if we could find out if the problem was truly a problem before you spent some money? Would that be an advantage for you? I thought so. Well, here's what I do. Sometimes it can happen right at the showing, where all of a sudden we see something that looks out of place, not quite right. Or it could even be something more obvious. Maybe there's a crack in the foundation. Well, I don't know about you. I'm not a mason contractor, but I surely do know people who are. And in some cases, I can get them to come out to the house while we're looking at it. I've done that. Make a phone call. Hey, Bill, where are you? You happen to be in this area? Why? Well, because we're looking at a house that's got a crack in the foundation. I'm not really sure. Any chance you could come out here and take a look at it? Now, I've worked with these vendors for years. And so a lot of times they will say, well, I can get out there in a few minutes, take a look at it for you. Or they might say, I can't get out there till tonight. And if that's the case, I may have to call the listing agent and say, listen, these guys like the house. They're just not comfortable with the crack, but I've got a mason that can come out and look at it tonight. Could we set something up? How many agents do you know that have done things like that for you? By the way, if the mason charges me for coming out and look, I'll pay it for you. Don't worry about it. It's not going to cost you anything. In most cases, these are people I've done so much business with, they don't charge me. But they'll come out and give you a professional look before you put the offer in. So that's 5 things that you can be offering to your buyer clients that most agents are not doing. We all know how most agents work. They meet with somebody. They get the criteria. They put their name into MLS and start sending them emails, hoping something's going to pop up on MLS for them. But in the market we're in, the good deals, by the time they hit MLS, they're on deposit. Before we started this call, I was talking with some of you, and 2 of you said that you networked and were able to put deals together this week before they even hit MLS. One was a listing where the agent networked with some buyer agents, and one of them showed the property, put it together, hadn't gone in MLS yet. Another was a buyer agent who was networking with listing agents, put a deal together, hasn't gone into MLS yet. The things that happen that you don't know about as a buyer agent. By the way, there's nothing wrong with the way you're doing it. It's just you could be more effective if you start offering value for why they should hire you. Everybody could say, well, it's my experience. But the truth of the matter is, even the new agents get paid, and they don't have any experience. How are you going to demonstrate value when somebody flips the switch? I don't know how it's going to happen. Let's just pretend they flip the switch, on May 1st and say from now on, there will be no more buyer brokers offered in MLS or anywhere else. How are you going to get paid? Oh, I'll build it into the contract. I'll ask them to pay me outside of closing. Great. I love it. How are you going to demonstrate, though, that you're worth it? What are you going to say to them that's going to say, you know what, that makes sense to hire you rather than just go direct to the listing agent? What makes you worth it? I've given you 5 things. I'm sure there are others, and I'm going to keep compiling a list and make it public. We have to demonstrate value. A lot of you I know are really good at what you do, but you don't tell them. And that's what's important. Why aren't we telling them? Well, in the past, we haven't had to. We always knew our fee was going to be paid by the seller as part of the contract. That's just the way it's been. You haven't had to do that, but you're going to. And so what I'm doing is trying to get you ahead of the curve, get you ready. A lot of this stuff you already know you do, but it's time we start telling them, because that's the only way you're going to get paid. Hope you picked up a tip or two. I'm going to turn off the recording and let these guys throw some other ideas. And if they come up with enough, maybe I'll just re-record this for you. But right now you've got 5. Maybe we get to 10 or 12 or 15. Some people say, well, as a listing agent, I do 184 different things. Yeah, no, they don't. Trust me, they don't. But what if we could focus on 4 or 5 things that we do that make us stand out, that make us different than everybody else? Hope it works for you. It works for others. Have a great one. I'm going to turn the recording off.